Welcome to the McAllister Report. We join John McAllister, top football evaluator, as he shares wisdom and interviews coaches and athletes from around the country. Enjoy today's podcast.
Hello, this is John McAllister, and I'd like to welcome you to the John McAllister Report. Today, my guest is the current defensive coordinator at the University of Toledo, and before that, he was the head football coach at Mount Union, and before that, he was the defensive coordinator at Mount Union. Vince Kehres has been in the game a long time. He's young. I think he's 45, 46 years old, and does a heck of a job coaching football. For me, his biggest strength is a communicator to players, to staff, to fans, to everybody. And today he's going to talk mostly about making kids better. You know, he talks a little bit about the program, but making kids better, what he looks for in recruiting and all those things. So if you sit back and enjoy my video podcast with Vince Kehres, defensive coordinator at the University. Like I said earlier, my guest today is Vince Kehres, and the defensive coordinator at the University of Toledo. And I've gotten to know him more and more. And honestly, I respect him more and more because of his biggest strength. Now, he's won a lot of games. He's smart. I think his biggest strength is communication. I watch him communicate with his players. And I watch him communicate in the summer camps. And I think that's huge. And I think that's how you build relationships, but it's huge. Coach, how are you today?
I'm doing real well, John. How are you doing today?
I'm good. When spring practice start?
We start on Monday, February 27th. So we're just a couple weeks away here.
Okay, let's hook on there real quick. Vince, I'm a big proponent of kids getting on campus. What can you say about coming to spring practices for athletes or for prospects?
I think it's huge because I think it allows the student athlete to get a feel for what the coach's coaching style is. You know, if you get there early, you can get into the meetings before practice starts and sit in on those and, you know, get a chance to see how the coach is interacting with his players, you know, and then you get out to practice, you see the different periods of practice, see individual, you know, you get a chance to look at the position group that you'd be joining up close and see what the athletes look like and what they're being taught and how they're interacting with the coach and, you know, kind of how you would fit into the culture of that team and, you know, what type of relationship that you would have with that coach.
I think that's huge. You know, I think in all the years, I don't know, I've never talked about going to staff meetings and stuff, and position meetings and things like that. That would be huge as well.
I think so too. For me, I would want a prospective student athlete to sit in the meeting room because I feel like like you said, a good coach is a good communicator, is a good teacher. And, you know, if you're able to sit in that room and, you know, and learn a little bit and get a feel for what type of teacher that coach is, boy, I think that makes that place all the more intriguing to you as a potential student athlete.
For sure. Okay. And we're going to go, the gist of this, I told you earlier, is that I make kids better. And that's what I do, these podcasts, video podcasts. But before we do that, you know, obviously we have to talk a little bit about your Mount Union years. And I will say one thing, I think I told you this joke. I coached at the College of Worcester back in, I think, 76, 77, someplace in there. And before we went to play Mount Union, some of the players said, Mr. McAllister, he said, if they get going, that whole sidelines will go, woo, woo. I don't know if they do that anymore, But sure enough, you got going, and the whole student section, everybody's going, they're making that woo sound. I
Mm-hmm.
thought that was really funny. And the
Mm-hmm.
other thing I learned, I think I told you this, in all my years, I was a head coach and stuff. I always went over the the kick after the safety, even though it was a punt. I always went over that because in that game, your punter kicked one, golly, real high in the air on a safety punt,
Mm-hmm.
and you guys recovered it. Our kids almost looked at it like it was just going to be a dead ball, and
Mm-hmm.
your players jumped on that. That's something I
Mm-hmm.
always remember. Mount Union, you won some championships. 7 years as a head coach, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
Two
sir.
championships,
2.
two, and you were there 5 times, right? As a head coach?
6, I believe.
Okay, good. We're not going to go into that much detail. I told you that. But the biggest thing, you coached for your dad, and you were there a total of 21 years, right?
I was, yeah, something like
Something
that.
like that. I did a little bit of homework, but I get bored reading all these facts. Tell me, Coach, one, what's it like coaching for your dad? Because you were the DC. So what's it like coaching for your dad, real quickly?
Well, it was a great experience. I felt like I was in a position where I was able to learn and felt like I was given a lot of opportunities. I was given a lot of responsibilities, and I was able to, to learn a lot because of the responsibilities that I had been given. But, I think many of us benefited from having a really good mentor who was very concerned about our growth and development as young coaches.
When I was a young coach many, many moons ago, Miami was the cradle of coaches, Miami of Ohio. Now, I don't want to tell my Mount Union friends this, but I think Mount Union's the cradle of coaches. I mean, all you guys, they're every place. Mount Union coaches, I mean, clear down East Liverpool or someplace, and he played there. And, and then Coach Campbell's a really good friend of mine, and obviously he played there. So that's really neat. Okay, when you made the switch, and I read a little bit about this, but when you made this, you came to Toledo, and I don't know if you're the DC the first year, but I know you were the second. So when you made the switch, what prompted that you can say?
Well, I think, I was at a point in my career where, I was intrigued by the possibility of another challenge,
Okay.
and maybe being at another place. I had become very comfortable at Mount Union, had really lived in Alliance, Ohio my entire life. And, nearly my entire coaching career was at Mount Union, aside for 1 year of teaching and coaching at Austintown Fitch High School. I wanted to explore that possibility. And then, for me, and this is where I always relate this to recruiting, because I think it's a similar position that a prospective student athlete finds himself in. For me, there was a couple of boxes that I had to check if I was, for me to make that decision, for me to cement that decision. First box, I wanted to work with guys that I knew, guys that, I had some past experiences with, and, I knew we would have similar philosophies and coaching styles, and, it would be a good fit. And, certainly that was the case at Toledo, having come up with Coach Candle, and, having worked and coached with Ross Watson and Ricky Ciccone and Mike Howlett and a lot of guys that were already on staff. And then 2, I wanted to be at a place where, I felt like if I worked really hard to be the best at my job, everyone else would be doing the same thing, and we can win, and we can, not only have success, but sustain success, because that's, something I'd been accustomed to at Mount Union. And, I felt that Toledo, certainly offered that opportunity.
I guess I ask you that question too, because I think Coach Trussell once told me it's not where you coach, it's who you coach for. To
It's
move.
very true. I couldn't agree more.
And he told me that we were talking, and I always thought that was neat. And I think the other reason I ask you this is because so many young guys are all trying to move up the ladder, trying to get it's hard. I'm talking about college and high school, and maybe getting that D3 mentality helped a little bit. Now you're in D1. That may be a little bit. I mean, you've accomplished a lot at D3, but now going to D1. And I think that was huge. And I read someplace where your dad said they asked him about it, and Coach Kehres, me and Coach Kehres said he's 43 years old. He can make his own decisions, or something like that. That's so much Coach Kehres, by the way.
No doubt.
Okay, what would be your advice to young college coaches or young college students in the coaching profession trying to get into college coaching? What could you tell me in, I don't know, 3 or 4 sentences? What could you tell me?
Well, I think it's important for them to understand that they need to be patient. They really have to be willing to work very, very hard for extremely little pay. And honestly, I've told guys in the last few years, it's such a crowded profession right now. You really have to be willing to volunteer. You have to be willing to do that to get your foot in the door sometimes. And and there are no guarantees. Just the I got in, and I worked really hard. The stars have to align sometimes too, for you to move up. So it's something that I think guys should be very deliberate about in making that decision, and and then be patient, and just continue to grind out good things, good days, and good things will happen.
Well, I think I know you're right, but you're so right. And I've had guys tell me, "Hey, how can I get into the profession?" Well, I'm kind of retired now, but get in what you do. I said, number one, you're not going to make any money, and two, I said it's so hard to gain confidence of coaches and stuff and things. Okay, let's talk about. We talked about the practice visits, spring practice. Let's talk about camps, because they're up pretty soon. Tell me, prepare a player for camp. What should he do?
Well, I think we would recommend to any prospective student athlete, the best thing that you can do when it's not football season is play another sport. So I think by playing basketball, getting out and being on the part of the track team, in some capacity, I think that still allows you to find time to work out and be with your high school football coach to train and prepare for the football season. But be an athlete. If you're not playing a sport, then you have more time to prepare specifically for football and prepare for football camps. But I think that at the heart of it is doing everything that you can to help your high school football team, and prepare to win games there. I think sometimes guys get caught up in wanting to go to every football camp there is in June. And, I think that's an impossible task to go and perform really well and perform at your best. So, I think you make that summer camp calendar, and you really try to get to the schools that express the most interest in you and get to their campus. And, maybe you get to a camp at an Ohio State or at one of the mega camps that they're having now, where there's going to be a lot of coaches as well. But I think you got to limit it to, 3 or 4 camps and then set a target of doing the best you can at those that you can attend.
I think so. I agree with you. And big isn't always better. Sometimes one mega camp, but I wouldn't waste my time on a lot of them. It's just too big.
Yeah.
And then you guys have an idea who you're looking for anyway. So you're going to see them again. I mean, you may find a diamond in the rough, but there's just so many kids. I think you have to have some kind of idea who you're looking for. Okay. Now you're the linebacker coach, I think. How do you stress what's important to a linebacker? What do you look for in linebackers?
So we try to identify some critical skills at every position,
Okay.
things that you can objectify to some degree and try to measure by, by an individual's video, by an individual's measurements, maybe by what they do at a camp, from a standpoint of a broad jump or a 40-yard dash time, those sort of things. But at linebacker, for me, it starts with read and react. I want to see a linebacker on videotape, a line, get a quick read on what the action of the play is, and then react quickly and appropriately to put himself in a position to finish the play. I think beyond that, it would be, the ability to change directions, to have lateral agility, to get to the football consistently. At this level of football, you have to be able to cover as a linebacker. So you want to see plays on the videotape where he has to open up. He has to run with a receiver down the field, with a running back getting out of the backfield into a route. He's, maybe it's a play where he's got to take off and make a tackle over on the sideline, but you want to see speed, that often comes in the form of a burst of speed on the videotape. Being that we have scholarships, we're looking for, guys with good length too. I think, guys with longer bodies and long arms, they tend to, to be able to make more tackles, and use their arms for leverage and to keep themselves from being blocked and finish plays in terms of whether they're rushing the passer on a blitz or whether they're knocking down a pass on the tight end, whatever it is. But, you look for those things, and then, the ability to finish plays. A guy that is finishing a lot of plays and is just flashing on his highlight tape. That means a lot to me as well.
Finishing plays, I think, is so huge. And speaking of highlight films, I tell kids all the time, don't forget, these guys, college coaches, see game films. Your highlight video is an appetizer. It gets you halfway, and that better be a good highlight film. My goodness. Mm-hmm. But I said they look at game tapes too. I think one other thing I notice, it's getting better, but with the offenses the way they are, guys think they got to jack up the blocker. If anything, they got to get away from the blocker. Get off the blocker. You don't want to stand in. They're like the old, I don't even know if you remember, it's a 52 angle defense. At linebacker, all he did is come up inside. You can't do that anymore. You got to be able to run, don't you?
You do. You have to be able to play out in space. The offenses will position the tight ends and the running backs out in space, and that's usually who the linebackers are matched up on. And you got to be able to play out there. You got to be able to tackle and cover in the open field. I told a kid, prospect the other day, he's a running back, and I said, go through your film, and if you were ever on the kickoff team, show one or two plays of you being on the kickoff team and making a play. I said, and they go, why? I said, that shows you're going to run and hit and make plays. I was just watching a couple of highlight tapes this morning, and those plays that were a kickoff coverage, those stand out. They do.
I know, and it's really good. Okay, I'm going to finish up pretty soon. Now let's talk about the other. We talked about what you expect in linebackers, and now what about the intangibles? I guess I want to say, what do you look for? You're going to go out and recruit. You're going to make a visit to the school. You guys, I think, have already done evals in that way a little bit. Mm-hmm. But what do you look for in a prospect? You're coming, as far as not physical, not height, not length, any of that stuff, what are you looking for?
Well, I think a couple of things that we look for, beyond the physical attributes, the talent and the measurables and those things would be, are you a good young man? For years, I sat in my dad's office and listened to him, be very direct in asking young student athletes that question, and he was gauging their response and their parents' response, because their parents were often with them. But, we're looking for good young people, and I think young people that have some core values that have been instilled in them, by their parents, by their teachers and coaches, grandparents, whoever that's been over the years. And then we want them to bring those core values with them when they come to college, whether it's Toledo or Mount Union or Ohio State or wherever it is. I think a lot of coaches would feel the same way about that. And then another thing I think is really important is that they understand the importance of education, and they're showing you that by getting the grades that they're capable of, and if they're capable of achieving all A's, then that's what they should get. If they're working very hard in the classroom and they're getting B's and maybe some C's, but they're achieving to their full potential, then I think that's okay too. But they have to understand the importance of being a student athlete and value that. So those are a couple things that we're looking for, aside from the football part.
Okay, and then I think it's interesting you said what they're capable of and everything. I taught school for 31 years, and some guys can't get an A or maybe they get a sprinkling of B's, but as long as they're busting their chops to do that, I think it's huge. I really do.
Well, we're from the state of Ohio, Coach, and Woody Hayes said it's okay to get a C if it's a hard-earned C.
Right, and it's very, very true. The other thing, I'm going to finish up here. Tell me, Coach, about the difference between Division III, the basic difference between Division III. Now, obviously, Mount's an exception. I mean, let's cut to the chase. But what does a Division III compare to Division I? What's the difference seen from Division II to Division I? Can you put any light on that or not?
Well, I think the biggest thing to me, in terms of the recruiting was, when there's a scholarship involved versus there's not a scholarship involved. What I've had to adjust to is, okay, this player is good enough. We want to recruit him. Now, we didn't have a scholarship. I didn't have a scholarship for years to offer an individual that I felt like I was good enough. So a lot of guys fell into that boat. Okay, he's good enough. Let's recruit him. Let's see if we can get him, and then we'll see what happens from there. We'll bring him in, and he's got to compete. He's got to earn everything that he has. And with scholarships, you have to narrow that evaluation a little bit more. Okay, I got a list of guys that I think are good enough. Who do I think is the best one? Right. Well, what happens if I can't get him? He goes to Pitt or West Virginia or Cincinnati. What happens if I can't get him? Then, who's the next guy on my list? So, you have to like you said, we have to watch the game film. We can't just watch a 3-minute videotape. So we got to dig a lot deeper to find out, to find out what separates one player from the next. Yes.
Okay. Coach, I really appreciate you taking 22 minutes here. It goes fast to spend time. And like I said earlier, if somebody wants to read about all your accomplishments, I'm sure they can Google your name and find all the things that you've done. And like I said earlier, too, I think you are an excellent communicator. I've been around this thing for 30 years plus, and I think I know what communications are, and you do a great job. Thank you for being on my podcast.
Coach, I'm honored to be here. My first years in recruiting, I was studying those McAllister reports for names of prospects, and those things were gold. So I have great respect for you and what you've done over the years.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Coach.
Okay, have a great day.
Okay.